Life is full of contradictions. You're helping other people get well, but you don't feel that well. Your coworkers are all being promoted. You're working just as hard, producing just as much, but nobody notices you. If we're honest, we all have these secret frustrations, things that we know God could change. We know He could open the door. He could remove the temptation. He could give us the baby we've been dreaming about. But it's not happening. We have to realize God is a sovereign God. We're not going to understand why everything happens. There are some things that God doesn't remove. Some situation He waits a long time to change. You have to trust that He knows what's best for you. Everything that's not changing, what He is not removing, if you will keep the right attitude, it won't work against you. It will work for you. Don't let the contradictions of life cause you to be sour and give up on your dreams. Is there something you've been imploring God to change? Situation in your health, your finances, a relationship? You've asked again and again. Nothing is improving. I'm not saying to give up and settle there. What I'm saying is until God removes it, don't let it steal your joy. Don't let it sour your life. You have the grace to be there. The right attitude is, I'm not going to let this secret frustration, this thorn in my flesh, so to speak, frustrate me anymore. God, I believe your grace is sufficient. I know at the right time you will change it. But even if you don't change it, I'm still going to be my best and honor you. You have to make up your mind that if your spouse never changes, if your health never improves, if you have to put up with that grouchy boss the rest of your life, you are not going to complain. You are not going to use it as an excuse to slack off. You're going to tap into this grace. It is sufficient for you. Here's a key. Don't stay focused on the frustration. If Paul would have gone around thinking, God, why won't you remove this thorn? Why won't you change my child? Why won't you help my business grow? If he would have stayed focused on the whys of life, he would have never fulfilled his destiny. Faith is trusting God when life doesn't make sense. If you're going to reach your highest potential, you can't be a weakling. You have to be a warrior. There will be things you don't understand, things that don't make sense, but God knows what He is doing. His ways are better than our ways. He is the potter. We are the clay. When it's time to be removed, He will remove it. Until then, dig your heels in and fight the good fight of faith. You have the grace you need for every situation. When Jesus healed the man that had been crippled for 38 years there by the pool of Bethesda, He told him to get up, take up his bed and walk. I believe it was significant that He asked him to take his bed with him. He didn't need it anymore after all. But God was saying, this thing that's held you back, this thing that's kept you from being your best for so many years, I want you to take it with you as a reminder of what I've done in your life. Even though he could walk, even though he didn't need the bed, it remained a part of his life. It was a contradiction. I'm healed, I'm healthy, I can walk, but I've got my bed. I can imagine him going to help someone else that was struggling. They look at him and say, how can you help me? You've still got a bed. You're still carrying around that thing that held you back. He said, no, it's not what you think. It's not a limitation to slow me down. It's a testimony of what God has done in my life. This bed may look like a liability, but really, it's an asset. Every time I see it, it reminds me to give God praise. It reminds me where He brought me from. It reminds me that if He did it for me once, He can do it for me again. What am I saying? Even though God frees you from certain things, you may still have your bed. You may still be tempted in that same area. The weakness, the limitation, may not totally go away. But one reason God doesn't remove the bed totally, not to slow you down, give you an excuse to go back, but rather to remind you of where you came from. That bed is not there to discourage you, but to inspire you. Another reason God doesn't totally remove the bed is because if you think you can do it all on your own and you've got it all figured out, you don't need His help. Before long, you'll be right back where you were. But if you'll see the weakness, the temptation, as a reminder to ask God for His help, to show you your dependency on Him, then you will continue to rise higher in spite of what comes against you. In the Old Testament, God told Moses to go tell Pharaoh to let the people go. Moses said, "God, how will he know that you sent me? I don't come from an influential family. What makes you think Pharaoh is going to listen to me?" God told Moses to throw his staff on the ground. When he did, it turned into a snake. He picked it back up and it turned back into a staff. He told him to put his arm in his coat, and when he pulled it out, it was filled with leprosy. He put it in, pulled it back out, and it was clean as can be. God was showing him with these signs so he could go in with confidence, knowing that Pharaoh would listen to him. But Moses had another concern. He said, "God, I can't stand before Pharaoh. I stutter. I've got a problem with my speech." You would think since God just showed him these great miraculous signs, God would simply touch his tongue, make him normal, take away the stuttering. But God didn't do that. He didn't remove the problem. He was saying to Moses what he said to Paul, "My powers show up best in weaknesses." And Moses, if I needed to remove that stuttering so that you could fulfill your destiny, I would have removed it. Are you waiting for God to remove something before you can be happy, before you can pursue a dream, before you can finish school? No. If God hasn't removed it, it's not an accident. You don't have to put your life on hold because you have a secret frustration. You have everything you need to fulfill your destiny. The scripture talks about how we have treasure in these earthen vessels. All of us have imperfections in our clay vessels. In other words, there's probably at least one thing that God is not removing that we could easily be irritated by, live frustrated. Whatever your thorn is, God is saying to us what He said to Paul, "My grace is sufficient. Quit fighting it. Quit letting it steal your joy." When it's time to be removed, God will remove it. Until then, tap into this grace. "God, my life is in your hands. You know what I want. You know my dreams. You know what's bothering me. I may not understand it. It may not make sense, but God, I trust you." Here's a key. If God is not removing it, it's not an accident. There is a reason. Paul thought the thorn in his flesh was to keep him from being puffed up and too proud. Maybe that was true. Only God knows. But that secret frustration may just be a time of testing, where you have to prove to God that you're going to be content and do your best even though it's not going your way. You're going to keep giving even though you're not receiving. You're going to keep honoring Him even though you're not seeing things change. God could be using that to grow you up and develop your character. Some things we can only learn through experience. You can't learn through reading a book, listening to a message. The scripture says, our faith is tried in the fire of affliction. That's where our spiritual muscles are developed. You can't get stronger if you're not put under any pressure. You have to work out. Exercise your faith. It may not be comfortable. You may not like it, but if you'll stick with it, it's not working against you. It's working for you. You're growing. You're coming up higher. You're getting prepared for new levels. See, you can't be promoted without preparation. God won't give you a 100-pound blessing if He knows you can only lift 50 pounds. If He gave you the 100 pounds, it won't be a blessing. It would be a burden. It wouldn't help you. It would hurt you. He's got to get you prepared. Your gifts can take you to a certain level, but if you don't have the character to match, you won't stay there very long. Character is developed in the tough times, when we're not getting our way, but we keep doing the right thing. Like Paul, we've asked God a lot more times than 3 times to remove it. God, get this person out of my life that gets on my nerves. God, give me that child. God, change my spouse. No. While God is changing it, until He removes it, if you will stay in faith, not get bitter, not give up on your dreams, here's the beauty. Even if the situation doesn't change, you will change. God is growing you up, getting you prepared for new levels of your destiny. I've learned your character is more important than your talent. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have strong character, you're not going to go very far. We can all trust God in the good times. That's easy. I'm asking you, can you trust Him with the secret frustrations, the things that are not changing? You prayed and believed, but He is not removing it. The question is not only can you trust God, but more importantly, can God trust you? Will you pass the test? Stay in faith, even when you don't understand it. Friends, don't let these secret frustrations keep you from your destiny. Have a new perspective. You have the grace you need for every situation. If God is not removing it, there is a reason. Don't try to figure it out. Trust Him.